Morning, friends. My name is Sukhu. I'm an elder at Amberlea Presbyterian Church. We are located on Whites and Shrouds Lane, Pickering, Ontario. We welcome you to our service this morning. When it's safe, we will resume our regular worship at the church. Please stay tuned. Our prayer is that God, through His Spirit, will speak to you, encouraging and calling you through His Holy Spirit into a relationship with Him. Amberlea Church has a number of ongoing programs that reaches out to children, youth, and adults. Please visit our website for the various programs at www.amberleachurch.ca or send us an email at admin@amberleachurch.ca, and we can answer your questions and add you to our weekly mailing list. We accept donations at Amberlea Presbyterian Church. The Bible says, freely you give, freely you will receive. Well, thank you for your efforts to do so. Thank you again for joining us today. Let us continue with our service at Amberlea with our call to worship.
Okay. Is everyone ready? Let's get a yes or a no.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Loud, booming voices, like your confident team of young workers. This is the day the Lord oh my gosh, guys.
We all paused, so I didn't know if we were starting or not.
Wait, before we start, let's hear everyone's loud, booming voice. Say, good morning. 3, 2, 1.
Good morning.
3, 2, 1. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Oh, sorry. That
was so bad.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. This is the
day the Lord has made.
Let us
rejoice and be glad in it.
Well, good morning, Amberlea, and welcome back. Before we do anything else, would you join me in prayer? Holy God, I pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts would bring glory and honor to you, O Rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So I want to start off with a story. It's a true story. It's actually about a time right after I finished my undergrad at Brock University, which is in my hometown of St. Catharines. And after I completed my undergrad, I began my master's program at Tyndale University to do my Master's of Theological Studies. Okay, so while I was living in residence, I would go home periodically because the new pastor in the church that I was attending in St. Catharines had a really cute son, and his name was Brian. Well, we, weren't dating or anything, but he was cute. So I would go home periodically. While I was at Tyndale, there was a young man by the name of Rob who befriended me, and I befriended him, and we were friends. We were just friends. We were good friends. We would share classes together and ate meals together and went to the library together, and we hung out, and he would bring me tea, and he would send me notes, and he would bring me flowers. Okay, so he kind of liked me, but and I knew that he kind of liked me, but to be honest, I liked that he liked me, and I didn't stop him from liking me. And I never told him about Brian because, Brian and I weren't really a thing, and, but, I kind of like Brian, and I never told Brian about Rob because, we would hang out when we were in St. Catharines, and well, there was really nothing to tell. At least that's what I told myself. Like, what was the harm? We were all just friends. Yeah. So anyway, one day at dinner, Rob mentioned that he had never been to Niagara Falls. And I said, are you kidding me? you haven't been in Niagara Falls? Well, the next time I'm in town, you should just come and hang out, because we're like, 20 minutes, 30 minutes away from Niagara Falls, and I can show you around, right? Didn't think anything of it. So, I was being friendly and hospitable, neighborly even, didn't think twice of that conversation. So several weeks later, I find out that Brian is going to be going back to St. Catharines to visit his family because he was studying in Waterloo. And so I thought, I think I'll go home too. And so I call Brian up and I say, hey, this is before email and Facebook and Skype and FaceTime and all the other stuff. I can't even imagine a time now like that. But anyway, I called him up on a telephone that was kind of connected to a wall. And I said, hey, do you want to come over for dinner on Saturday night? And I'll cook. And he said, sure. And it was a date. Okay, so I make lasagna and garlic bread and Caesar salad, and the table was perfect. And my mom was home, and she, kind of helped me get things organized, but then she was off to work, and she knew that Brian was coming for dinner. It was all great. So the doorbell rings, and my mother answers the door just before she's like about to leave for work. And who's at the door but Rob? Surprise! So I introduced Rob to my mom and, whatever, a friend from school. So my mom shows him, because he comes with an overnight bag. So my mom shows him to the guest room. And while she's settling him into the guest room, I panic and I call my best friend, and she says, oh my, I'm coming right over, because she was not about to miss this drama. So I was just about to tell Rob about Brian, and the doorbell rings. And I think, thank goodness Susan has arrived and she can help me with this. But it was Brian. So I introduced them, and they, for whatever reason, don't seem to like each other. It was very, very awkward. So awkward. Brian doesn't want to talk to Rob. Rob doesn't want to talk to Brian. And I really didn't want to talk to either one of them. So not knowing what to do, I kind of busied myself in the kitchen. Like, I had to get the lasagna out of the oven, and where was Susan, and oh my goodness. So I'm pretty anxious now, and you're supposed to let lasagna set, wait 15 minutes, but I was not about to do that. So I call everyone to the table. There's 3 of us at the table, and I start scooping out this lasagna, and it's all soupy, and it's like stew, right? So I'm putting it on the plate. I'm just mortified. So we begin to eat, and the doorbell rings, and I think, thank goodness Susan finally arrives, right? She's finally here. But it wasn't Susan. It was actually my ex-boyfriend, Mark. So what do? I invite him in, right? And so there we were, 3 guys, the ghosts of boyfriend past, present, and future, and me. What was I thinking? What was I thinking? Honestly, this is such an important question. We ask this question all the time, and I bet you can remember the last time that you asked this question. When you said to somebody, well, what were you thinking? Or maybe you asked it of yourself. We ask this question a lot of history. We know the events, but when we look back, we think, well, what were they thinking? What was going on in their minds that brought them to that decision? For instance, there was a time in history when women were not allowed to vote. And this thought was very widely held. It wasn't until 1916 when the first province in Canada allowed women to vote. However, there were several restrictions. It wasn't until the 1950s in Canada when all provinces lifted all restrictions and women were openly allowed to vote. 1950s. Did you know the First Nation residential schools operated in Canada between the 1870s and the 1990s? Some thought that it was a good idea, right? Some thought it was a good idea, and they acted upon their thoughts. The last residential school closed in 1996. It's not that long ago. Segregated black schools. Someone thought this was a good idea and acted upon their thought. The last segregated black school in Ontario was finally closed in 1965. Get this, the last segregated school in Canada, which was Nova Scotia, closed in 1983. Again, that's not that long ago. And you have to ask, what were they thinking? And this is important because our thoughts precede our action, whether it's in word or deed. Thoughts drive our actions, and thoughts drove their actions. Now, if you want to know what people are thinking, you want to watch what they do. Our thoughts, your thoughts, drive your actions. And wouldn't it be helpful to know if you were in the middle of, what was I thinking decision, to know that there is a specific kind of way of thinking to avoid falling into those moments. Paul in the New Testament made a statement, a really little statement actually. He says this, finally, after all that I have said, think about such things, so that you can avoid the what was I thinking moment. For instance, if you say right now you're thinking about moving in with somebody, or maybe you're wanting to live on your own and you're thinking you're going to move out of your parents' place, or maybe you see this really bright shiny thing and you think, oh man, I could buy that, but I'm going to have to take out a line of credit first to buy it, which is all very manageable now. But a year from now, could it be a what was I thinking situation? Wouldn't it be good to know in advance how to avoid that situation? Wouldn't it be good to know the right way to think about such things? Well, I sure would, because life gets more complicated than that. What if you're about to lie to your spouse about something? Or what if you meet someone at work and the relationship is going down the wrong path? Or what if you're thinking to go into business with somebody and you're wondering, is it a good idea? Or what if it's your 19th birthday and your friends want to have a physically distanced party and they want to get you really drunk just to see what's going to happen? So let me tell you why this matters so much to me. As someone who has spent many, many years working with youth and their families, I see how the decision of the parents affect the lives of their children. And when a young girl or a young man shares with me the hurt and the guilt or the anger that they are feeling, or how they feel this burden that they're carrying, the responsibility that they feel for the rest of the family, whether it be physically or financially, a burden no child should have to carry, all because one of the parents decides to leave. And I wonder, what were they thinking? It's important to be thinking the right things, because if it's true that our thoughts precede our actions, then this is huge, and it has huge consequences for our lives. So when Paul says in this little verse, think about such things, don't you want to know? Well, I hope you do, because we're going to look at this verse more fully. It's Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. And it's a very simple verse. And Paul gives us 6 adjectives, 2 nouns, and 1 imperative. Okay? He goes through this list of adjectives and says, if you want to know what you should be thinking so that you can avoid this what was I thinking situation, I'm going to tell you. Listen to this. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think of such things. So let's take a look at these words just really quickly. Whatever is true. Important one. If someone was building their life on assumptions that were false, wouldn't you want to stop them? Wouldn't you want to say, hold on, I know why you're acting this way. It's because you're thinking about this and that's false. And because you're thinking things that aren't true, your actions seem ridiculous. Like a slender girl who thinks she's fat, right? And acts in ways that don't make sense, like making herself throw up or denying herself food. Or the business person who thinks people are out to get them, and so they respond defensively and aggressively or in a way that doesn't make sense when you ask them a simple question. Your thoughts drive your actions. And if you are thinking things that aren't true, then you're going to act accordingly. And Paul is saying that I want to catch you before you do that. For example, and I alluded to this a moment ago, there's a lie in society that tells young girls that your self-worth is found in how you look. Barbie dolls, right, for years have been the center of much controversy in what it communicates to young girls in terms of self-worth, body type. And if little girls buy into that lie, to have self-worth and value, you've got to look like a Barbie, then you can imagine the unhealthy practices many girls and many women adopt in order to achieve it. And unfortunately, studies show that these unhealthy practices are not just for women, they're for men too, who are getting Botox for their wrinkles and plastic surgery and laser hair removal. Why? Because of what media holds up as the ideal male. The photoshopped Calvin Klein model. When we engage with media, with movies and TV, and we see magazine ads of flawless women and perfectly chiseled men, if we believe the lie that we should be or could be like that, how will it affect the way we live our lives? And Paul says, whatever is true. The next word Paul uses is noble. Now, here is a word, and I'm not sure we would necessarily use it to describe our thoughts. I certainly wouldn't. When I think of the word noble, I think of royalty, kings and queens. And in this context, noble refers to thoughts that are worthy of respect. Whatever is true, whatever is noble. And then he goes on to say, whatever is right. Similar to whatever is true, but different in a way. Whatever is right, or in other words, whatever is just. Paul had this inclination that people generally didn't think fairly. And this is what I deserve, but I don't care what anybody else deserves, right? When Paul wrote this, he was locked up in a Roman prison, in chains and in shackles, and he was imprisoned falsely. Not very just, not very fair. Yet he's telling people that when you think about what is just, whatever's right, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right. And then he goes on, whatever is pure. This one's tough, to have pure thoughts. The thing is that we like things that are pure, clean, free of contaminants, right? Many people have moved to organic foods because we want to know that the food that we're consuming are free of chemicals. We have smoke-free environments and scent-free environments, and if there's anything more beautiful, I don't think there's anything more beautiful than the sparkle of a pure, clear diamond. If I asked you if you wanted your spouse to have pure thoughts, I would imagine that you would likely say yes. What about your children and your employer? Your mind and my mind probably a lot like this. There's these red beads that represent the unpure thoughts, and maybe the white beads represent the pure thoughts. And we think, oh God, create in me a pure heart. I want to get rid of this nasty stuff that I'm thinking about all the time, but I don't know how to do that. And God says, I can help you with that. Come to me, right? And if we ask for forgiveness, God can create in us just that, a pure heart with clean thoughts. When we use Philippians 4, as a filter, then we can actually separate out the unpure thoughts and the pure thoughts. And then we can think about that which is excellent and praiseworthy. Paul then uses another odd word to describe our thoughts. Whatever is lovely. In the Bible, the word for lovely is also used for generous or giving. And now if you're acting lovely towards someone, you're acting in a generous way. And I wonder how many of our thoughts would be generous thoughts. The opposite of that would be critical thoughts or cynical thoughts. And Paul says, I want you to think about people in a lovely way, a way that will give them the benefit of the doubt. True, noble, right, lovely. And then he goes on to the last one. Whatever is admirable. This is where it gets really hard because we know that we know what it means to be admirable. To be admirable is anything you look up to, anything that you admire, anything that you set up on a pedestal and you say, now that is what we should be living for. Your thoughts should be admirable. And then he puts this umbrella on it and says, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy. You know, I'm fascinated by people who are excellent in their line of work. I love talking to them. I love finding out what makes them tick. And what I have discovered is that most excellent people have excellent thoughts. You get through this list and you think, true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy. And I think Paul is setting the bar up, way up there so that we should strive for it. And here's the thing. If you aim for nothing in your life, you know what you're going to hit every time? Nothing. And in your mind, if you don't think about what you're going to think about, you know what you're going to think about? Who knows? That's the point. If you aim for nothing, you're going to hit nothing every time. I heard a saying that says this, thoughts that hold us most mold us most. I'm pretty sure that's true. So Paul is saying if you want to be excellent, if you want to have a goal, then if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about that. And then Paul puts this line at the very end and says, think about such things. Think. The word think means to dwell or to reside in. This isn't a passing thought. Oh, that's a lovely, good idea. No, this is a thought that takes residence in your mind. Paul is saying that we should live in those types of thoughts, so much so that it's our default. It won't be uncommon for us to think this way, but rather commonplace. So the weather started getting warmer and warmer, and so we turned on the air conditioner. But every time we either turn on the heat or the air conditioner, we check the filter, right? So before Brian turned on the air conditioner, he went down and he changed the filter, as we regularly do, and then he brought up the filter that was once white, and it was filthy. I mean, completely gray, covered in dust and allergens and Lord only knows what. And you think, wow, it is a good thing that we have a filter, because otherwise our family would be breathing in all this awful stuff, and that's not good. Funny, isn't it? How we really never think about the filter? The filter is an important part of the furnace, and the filter is an important part of our thoughts. What if Philippians 4:8 lay in our minds as a filter? And whatever thoughts you have in your mind, whatever decisions you go through, the filter becomes whatever's true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy. If you use that as a filter, what would be different about your life? How would that affect your life, your decisions, your choices, your actions, what you say, and who you are and who you're becoming? I would encourage you to do one thing, and it's really easy. I would encourage you to memorize this verse. You memorize things all the time, lyrics to a song, poems, phone numbers, well, maybe not so much phone numbers anymore, but people's names, right? We memorize stuff, and it sits in your brain when you need it. It's there, and it's the same thing if you memorize Philippians 4:8, and it'll just take you 5 minutes to do it. Just do it and let it sit in your mind. Let it marinate in your brain. Let it be a filter that lays over your thoughts so that during the day, when you're thinking about what to think about, that filter comes to mind. It's a wild concept to think about what you're thinking about. Nobody really does that. But to lay Philippians 4:8, and every once in a while when things pop up, when a decision pops up, when you're walking through your day, that would be your filter through which you think about life. Here's the thing. Your thoughts don't just affect you, though they are your thoughts. It affects the people around you. Your thoughts drive your actions to how you behave and what you say. What you are thinking affects your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your children, your neighbors, your parents. It affects all the people around you. It's not just a personal thing because your thoughts drive your actions. So, what are you thinking about? Are you even thinking about what you're thinking about? I encourage you to give this verse a try. Memorize it. Lay it as a filter for the way that you think, and let this verse help you to make wise choices. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Amen.